All right, today is Monday, October 2nd. We're in Opelika, Alabama. My name is Mike Smith with Auburn University History Department, and I'm here with Miss Virginia Peters Graham, also from Opelika, Alabama. And just before we start, Miss Virginia, I just want to make sure I have your permission to record this interview.
Sure.
Yes. Okay. Well, good afternoon. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Wonderful.
So I guess if we could start off, if you could just kind of tell us your name and where you're from.
My name is Virginia Peters Graham, and I'm from Opelika, Alabama. I grew up here, and I also own a business, a beauty salon. Been in it for 43 years, going on 44.
Okay, 44 years. Congratulations. Yes, ma'am. So, when you were born here in Opelika?
Yes.
Do you mind sharing what year you were born here?
I was born in 1954.
1954. Okay,
Yes.
Awesome. Going to when you were born here in Opelika, do you have any early memories of your childhood? And maybe you care to share about your family, your mom, your dad, siblings?
Yeah. Well, my childhood days, I grew up here in Opelika, and I came from a family of, actually it was 10, and unfortunately 2 of them were deceased at that time, but I've dealt with the 8 all the time.
That's okay.
It was 8 of us, minus those 2 that was already deceased. But my mother and father, my mother really didn't do that much work. I think the only job I remember her having was at a restaurant some years ago. And my father, he did construction work. And then after that, first of all, they formed. He come from a family of 15.
Your father came from a family of
Yes,
15?
my father
Okay.
came from a family of 15. And there were 2 sets of twins that was born out of that family. And back then they did a lot of farming. And I used to ask my grandmother how could she keep up with those twins. After being 2 sets, she said, well, I would take one in the room and I would number it. And I would stick the number there, and that would let me know that I've fed that one and I need to do this one, this set.
Oh,
And that
goodness.
was really amazing to me how she kept up with those 2 sets
Now, this is on your dad's side.
on my dad's side.
Okay. And was your father originally from Opelika?
Well, they were born and raised up in Chambers County.
Chambers County. Okay,
Yes.
so just the county right north of Lee County here in Opelika.
Yes.
Okay. And what about your mother? Was she
Well, my mother, she was born in Chambers County as well.
in Chambers County as well?
Mhm.
Do you recall what year your parents were born?
I think my father was in 1916. And my mother was, she's put that date. Now I know I should know her birthday. It was, it was in May of 17. She wasn't quite as old as my father. I think she said he was 10 years older than he was when she married him. He was an old man.
Okay.
She said he was an old man when she married him. I know the date, but I can't get it right.
That's okay. No, that's quite all right. From your childhood, do you recall any stories that your parents, your father or your mother, may have told you about their childhood growing up in Opelika or in Chambers County?
Well, he used to talk about how they used to farm and raise their own crops and kettles. They even had kettles that they dealt with the cows and the horses too, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
Because I used to, when he would go and plow the mule, they call him a mule
Okay.
back then. And I would sit on the handlebar and ride until one day he passed gas in my face. And I no longer want to ride.
So that's one of your early childhood memories.
Yeah.
Is you working with your father, working the land with your father,
Right.
with a mule
And with the mule.
and a plow behind the mule.
Right.
Okay,
Mhm.
that is amazing. Yeah, and so you think that was probably late 1950s?
Yeah, it had to be in the late 50s because I was born in 54. And it may have been in the 40s. Yeah, the late 50s, I would say.
Yeah,
'cause
late
I was
50s.
54.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
And I know they used to have their own chickens and around in the yard. Because one day I never forget, I loved the chickens and things so well, I used to try to feed them. And I cut my finger on a coffee can, trying to feed those chicks. And after I done it, I was so afraid I ran and hid up under the house. And the drops of blood, my mother was looking for me, and that's how she found me.
Wow.
With the drops of blood that was on. And then when she found me, I was on there nervous to death, but not knowing that I could have died.
Right.
Because when I got to the doctor, they said, well, she's lost a lot of blood, but we got to give her some more blood. But after that, I was okay. But I learned a lesson not to try to sneak and do something knowing I had no business. But I was trying to feed those little chickens.
At what age do you think that occurred?
I may have been maybe about 8, 7, 8, 9.
Very early 1960s.
Mm-hmm.
Do you recall during that time going to the doctor? Was it
Dr. Bruce.
Dr. Bruce?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when you went to
That
Dr.
used
Bruce,
to be the family doctor everybody went to at that time.
okay, was he here in Opelika?
Yes, he was here in Opelika.
And at that time, was it a segregated doctor's office?
Yes, there were. That's the doctor that most of the blacks went to at that time. But they used to have Dr. Steele also, and he was the black doctor.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Dr. Steele was an African American doctor.
Yes, he sure was.
In here in Opelika, and Dr. Bruce was a white doctor.
Yes.
But
Okay.
did he see only black patients, or was it black and white patients?
Black and white.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
awesome. So you were able to get in and get taken
Yes,
care of.
I was able to get in and get taken care of.
Right. It's thank you for sharing that. I'm sure the chickens were grateful you fed them, and I'm sure
Yeah.
your mom was very nervous about that condition you were in.
Yeah, not knowing that. I was scared I was going to get a whooping because my father was at work. And at that time, he was working at the mill.
Okay.
And they called him, and he came home, and they carried me to the doctor, not knowing that I could have bled to death. But, those chicken is what we ate. That was our food. That's what my grandmother used to, that's what we lived on,
Yes.
the chicken.
So you mentioned that your father was working at the mill, and this was the mill here in Opelika.
Yeah, it was in Opelika.
And so did he work at the mill and farm around?
Well, that was after they got through farming, then he went and found a better job. But
Okay.
that's what they did back then, they formed.
Okay.
And it was 15 of them.
15 of them.
Yes.
That farmed this one
Yes.
piece of land.
Well, most of the boys, because there was 15 of them in all, but there were, I think, 9 boys, 10 boys, and 4 girls,
Okay.
5 girls.
5 girls.
Mm-hmm.
So, and could you also, I'm going to back up just a little bit. Do you have would you mind sharing your father's name with us?
Lester Bryant.
Lester Bryant.
Mm-hmm.
And your mother's name?
Luella Bryant.
Luella Bryant. I like that name. Yes. That's a great name. Luella Bryant. Okay, awesome. So your father farmed, and then as he got maybe a little bit older, they kind of found a better job here at the mill. Was it a? It was a well-paying job at the
It was
time.
yes, it was a well-paying job.
Okay. And your mother was a homemaker.
Yes,
Okay,
she's
at the time.
pretty much stayed at home.
Okay. Okay. During your childhood, is there any other memories that stand out to you? Early childhood, maybe leading up to school, or maybe your first school
Yes,
memory that you may
of
have?
course. I remember my grandmother and my family, they was raised in a very big house. It belonged to these Caucasian people that they used to work for on that plantation where they lived. And I was so in such a hurry to go to school. I would run and put on a pair of high heel shoes and go to the door. And at that side of the door, it was no steps. And I had an aunt, which is, she's deceased now, but my father used to call her sister. And one of my father's sister, as a matter of fact. And she caught me the last time because I went and I fell out the door. And they said, Lord, this girl gonna kill herself trying to see that yellow school bus going down the road, because I wanted to go to school.
Right.
I wanted to go to school, so they tell me now, it's a wonder you have any brains. I'm thinking, why? Why would you even say that? Because as many times you fell out that door, you supposed to be. But I was so anxious to go into school until I hear that bus. I knew the sound. But I don't know what made me put them high heel shoes on. I do not. And I run to that side door every time. And the last time my aunt, she caught me. They said, Lord have mercy, this child will kill herself trying to see that school bus because I wanted to go to school. And I was left at home. Everybody else was gone.
You were just the youngest one?
Yeah, I was the youngest one at that time, and they wouldn't let me go to school.
Do you recall what schools you went to?
Yes, Sanford School.
Sanford, okay.
That's in the Beauregard area now.
Okay.
I think it's Sanford Middle School. That's what it is now, Sanford Middle School.
Now. And so you went through that. Was that a kindergarten through elementary type of school?
Yeah, back then it was, maybe first grade up to third grade.
Okay.
And then we still was trying to go to Sanford School, even though my father moved to a closer area in Opelika. And Mr. T.K. Davis, who is that was over the school system at that time, he would not allow us. He was there. I guess somebody had told him that we were living in the city limit, but we were still going to the country school. And he was there that morning and stopped us.
He stopped you though?
Yes, we couldn't go.
At the school?
He stopped us at that stop sign where the school bus, where everybody got on the school bus at.
Okay.
And he told us that we were living in the city limit of Opelika. We could no longer go to school at Sanford.
Okay.
And therefore, my older brothers and sisters that was going to Sanford, they had to go to Darton, and I had to go to Carver.
And that was kind of, at this point in time, the schools are still segregated?
Yes.
Yes. And Sanford was it?
It was, at that time, it was an all-black school.
Okay. And then when you relocated to Opelika here,
Yes.
Mr. T.K. Davis stopped you from getting on the school bus?
Yes.
Due to a district boundary issue?
Right.
Okay, and then you switched over to the Opelika City Schools?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember about that switch over? Anything that you recall?
Well, not really, because I was the type person that it didn't matter where I was, I would always make friends. But I guess we were so accustomed to going to Sanford until when we had to change over. It was kind of, I missed a friend that I had made there, but of course, I met some more.
Yes, ma'am. Attending Opelika City Schools, I'm guessing in the early 1960s at this
Yes.
point,
Mhm.
maybe. Okay.
Yes.
Do you recall going to all segregated schools? Do you recall any integration of schools?
Yes, the school was integrated when I got to maybe the 9th, 10th grade.
Okay.
And it was at that time Opelika High School. Because actually, when school was segregated, I was going to Darden. I had gotten to the high school in the 9th grade, my 9th grade year. Darden it was an all-black school at that time, but we had, the integration was when we went to Opelika High. Some of the students went to Darden, some went to Opelika High, but I chose to stay at Darden simply because of the fact that they had a trade school.
Okay. So you chose to stay at Darden because of the trade school.
Yes.
Did any of your siblings choose to go to the other school?
Well, no, because by that time they had all graduated
Okay.
because they were older than me.
Okay.
But I've had several friends now
Okay.
that went to Opelika High School.
What trade were you seeking at Darden?
Well, in Darden High School, I got out every day at 12 because I was a T&I student. And I took up, I was taking sewing. And I took that while I was at Darden.
Sewing.
Sewing.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so I learned how to sew and do alteration and all that type of stuff. And then I got out at 12 o'clock every day at school. And I went to work. I also worked at a Colony Men's store, which was a store, one of the most expensive stores that was at Midway Plaza at that time. I went to work doing alteration.
Okay. And at that time, were the storefronts still segregated, or were they, letting anyone, regardless of race, come in to shop?
They was letting anyone come in, but majority of the time the store was so expensive, that kept a lot of the people. I might color out because of the fact that it was a very expensive store. And then but anybody could come. They just didn't shut them down, but they could.
Yes. From your experience during high school at Darden, were there any tensions between the high schools? Is it Opelika High School?
Opelika High. But even though I was at Darden, we had a white principal.
Okay.
And his name was Mr. O.J. Simpson. And I had no problem with him, but he would run them students up and down the hall all day long, but I really didn't have no type of entwine with him.
When you say run the students up and down,
get to your classes, get to your classes, get to your classes, but I never had no problem with him.
right?
No.
Although you didn't have any problems with them, was there a history of?
Now, there were
conflict?
some students there, they had a problem with him, because the first time that their principal they had, Mr. Parker, William Parker, he was their assistant principal. And Mr. Simpson was the principal, but he was just as bad, so. He was just as bad to them. I didn't have any problem with any of them, but there were several complaints from other students.
On the terms of discrimination based upon
Yes.
race.
Mhm.
And the assistant principal, was he also a white?
No, he was black.
He was black, okay.
Mhm.
And what was his name?
William Parker.
William Parker.
And Miss Patsy Parker,
Miss Patsy Parker.
husband. She's on the board of school director or something like that.
She was on the board.
She still is.
She still is.
And up in her 80s, she should be close to her 90s.
Okay. Awesome. Board of Education. I'm just making a note of that.
Yeah,
Yes.
she is.
That is impressive.
Yeah.
Good for her. So coming up, you went through a high school that was segregated, and you chose to stay at the high school because of
The trade.
the trade industry, and you learned how to be a seamstress, and you learned that skill set. Did you go to any type of college after high school?
Yes, I went to Southern Union,
Southern Union. Was it
Yeah.
called Southern Union at the time?
Opelika Tech.
Opelika Tech. I learned it at the meeting the other day.
Yes,
Yeah.
Opelika Tech.
Okay, Opelika Tech. Did a lot of your fellow students at Darden High School, did they also attend Opelika Tech? And was there a large percentage going off to college or
There
some
was a
type of trade
very
school?
large percentage going off to college.
Okay.
And like I said, a lot of my classmates and friends, they were at Opelika High School, and they done well. Done exceptionally well.
Do you think there was a difference between the population that attended Opelika High School and the ones that stayed at Darden?
Well, there were more at Darden. Now, it was just like sprinkled around at Opelika High School, but there were several went, but it wasn't as many as it was at Darden.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Was the percentage of, if you think, did you feel disenfranchised going to Darden High School for continuous education? Or do you think, the people at Opelika High School were able to go to college at a higher rate or more opportunities at one school
Right,
versus the
now
other?
I see where you're going. Well, in particular, I didn't feel no way as far as what I was interested in, but there may have been more opportunities if I had gone to Opelika High School. Yeah.
I can tell you're a proud graduate of Darden High School, and that is great. You're still happy with your decision
Yes,
these years
very.
down the road?
Very, because now I don't do that now, but because I took another trade as I gotten older, but that one that I took at Darden, I used it well back then, and hey, it helped me out. I've learned, so I know how to do more than just one thing, you know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. Outside of high school, during this years of the civil rights movement, do you remember any social,
Yes.
teenagers in high school or right out of high school? Do you
Well,
recall?
I consider myself, I was young then, because I knew this lady by the name of Mrs. Pearlie Hutchison, whom was one of my clients after I graduated from Opelika Tech cosmetology school. And she used to tell me all the time, Virginia, you need to join the NAACP. And I said, well, I knew that there was a lot of things that was going on back then, but I was just the type that would sit around and just watch before I would say anything. So one day she called me again. She said, well, Virginia, you need to get involved in NAACP. I said, well, Mrs. Hutchison, what is the problem? She said, you need to become a member. I said, well, okay, I'll do that. So I joined the NAACP back in 1988. Young.
Yes, ma'am. 1988. And Miss Hutchison at the time, she was also a member of the
NAACP. And then she was a nurse at East Alabama Medical Center.
Okay.
But it had another name too at that time. It was Lee County. Was it Lee County Hospital? I believe that's what it was. Yeah, that's for the East Alabama Medical Center.
Okay. So Ms. Hutchison kind of encouraged you to join the
Yes.
NAACP. And what was her role in the NAACP? Was she just a member, or did she have a leadership role at that
I
time?
believe at that time she was one of the leaders.
She was one of the leaders.
Yes,
Okay.
because Mr. William Hopper was the secretary.
Okay. And prior to you joining the NAACP in 1988, if we can go back to maybe when you graduated Southern Union or Opelika Technical College at that point in time, in between that period of time in 1988, do you remember hearing about NAACP initiatives or any type of movements?
Yes, I'm very familiar with the movement because I used to listen to, I was always around older people. And when I was around the older people, I would hear different conversation that was going on and different thing that was taking place in the schools. As a matter of fact, before they were integrated, some of the problems that they were having and whatnot, but so I knew about it before I even got involved.
And during the civil rights movement, when the NAACP kind of formed here in Opelika, and throughout, you were a young girl at the time,
Yes.
but coming up through high school and things, do you remember any type of violence or anything in Opelika or Auburn or the surrounding areas?
Now, back, no, that would be in the 80s. That would have been in the early, it was in the 80s.
Okay, well, that's okay too.
It was in the early 80s where one of these young black girl had gone to this grocery store, and back then it was O.B. Ennis, and they said one of the manager had slapped this black young lady. And so after that, it got back to Reverend Bandy, who's deceased at this time, but he was just like a Martin Luther King here in the city of Opelika. And so they did a boycott, a riot.
Okay, and that was Reverend
George C. Bandy.
George C. Bandy.
Mm-hmm.
And where was he a reverend at?
Reverend, yes, that's him. At St. James Missionary Baptist Church.
St. James. Okay, yes, ma'am. You can check your phone too.
I'm finna turn this phone. I
you're
thought I
okay.
had it off. Okay, now the complete.
So
off.
Reverend Bandy led a boycott against the grocery store.
Yes,
Okay.
we had picket signs and whatnot, and we marched around his store until nobody could go up in there to buy groceries or none of that.
Okay. And what grocery store was this again?
O.B. Ennis.
O.B. Ennis.
Mm-hmm.
So you would say that the boycott was successful.
Oh yeah,
Do you
it paid
recall?
off. It really did. It paid off. He said, whatever y'all are doing or whatever, he apologized, and I think it may have paid that young lady.
Okay.
But he got with the program after that. I mean, that what he had done. He did what he was supposed to have done. I mean, to the young lady, told her he was sorry and whatnot. But I think they paid her off.
How many people do you think were out boycotting in front of that grocery store?
Oh, about 30 or 40.
30 or 40.
Mm-hmm.
All NAACP members, you think, or?
All of them may not have been NAACP members, but they were heavily involved. As long as Reverend Bandy said he was going to do a march, they was ready to go.
So he was kind of like you mentioned Martin Luther King for the
Yeah.
local area, and people looked up to him.
Yes,
He was really active in the NAACP.
very active in the NAACP, the Lee County Voters League. SCLC, Southern Christian Leadership.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you have any other memories of Reverend Vandy?
Oh,
and his-
Lord, do I? How many? When the Public Works, right out here on Fox Run, there were desegregated areas where the black was on one side and white was on the others. And then come to find out they were paying the white more than they were paying the blacks. They were not even getting vacation days or no, what you call it, 401k, none of that. They wasn't even taking out, I don't think it was insurance on them. They wasn't getting anything.
So no benefits. at
No
all?
type of benefits, no. So after that, they had a ride, they did a ride there. And they didn't want them people standing out there with all them sign, them picket signs, so they got it together, they got it right. After he got through speaking and let them know that he was not going to do that, they came to him and told him, we want everybody, because I think they had even fired one of the guys that told it, that what they was not getting.
And this was all during the 1980s.
Yeah, it was in the 80s.
1980s.
Yeah.
So even still at that time in the 1980s, 15 years, almost 2 decades after the civil rights movement here in Alabama, really is the, as you call it, the capital there.
Yes,
at one point
the
in time.
capital.
You were still seeing discrimination playing out.
Yes.
In the workplace, in social.
Very much so.
Okay. Did you
Yes.
ever experience any of that personally?
Well, the bus station, as a matter of fact, used to be right there across from the courthouse. They had where when I even experienced this myself one day. I was young. I was really young. I had to go to the bathroom, and they told me, no, you can't go in that bathroom. You got to go to the back. So I had to go around to the back of the bus station to use the restroom.
And this is when you were a little younger.
I was younger, yeah.
Do you recall how that made you feel, what you were thinking at the time?
Listening, like I said, I dealt with the older people a lot, and I learned that, it was not right. I knew that it was not right. But that's what I had to do is go to the back and use the restroom. They wasn't letting anybody of my color to go to the front. They had separate bathroom they had to use. And I mean, this was the only bus station that they had, but it was not right.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Do you recall any other instances, maybe?
Let me think. The separate break room, the grocery store, and there were, excuse me, I'm trying to think what else was there, but I do remember those. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm glad I thought about the bus station because I'd like to have forgotten that, and that was something I definitely did not want to leave out because it was true.
I know you mentioned using the restroom at the bus station. Do you recall riding the segregated bus and where you sat on the bus and any dynamics about on the bus at all?
No, I did not experience that because I very seldom rode the school bus.
So that was a school bus station that you're talking about.
No, this was a bus station. It's
bus
where
station.
when everybody got ready to travel, they had to go to the bus station to get a ticket. If I wanted to go from here to Columbus, Georgia, and I didn't want to drive, I would go and catch the bus. You catch the bus. If I wanted to go to Chicago, you had to go to the bus station. But there were separate areas that black could attend and white could not.
Do you recall if some of these events, and I know Miss Hutchison kind of, encouraged you to join the NAACP, but with her encouragement prior to you, becoming a member, do you recall certain events that really stuck with you, that kind of motivated you or made you want to stand up and say,
Yes, there were back here now, this was in the 2000s.
Okay.
There were, right here in the city of Opelika, I said, after marching with Dr. Martin Luther King and all of them, I had gotten involved then. But when this black young man was on his way home, he had gotten in his house, they said, had opened the screen door, and one of the Opelika Police Department, one of the police officers shot him, killed him dead.
On his front porch going
On
to
his
his
front
house.
porch going to his house. I said, wow, I really got to get involved in it.
So this was in the 2000s, you
Yes,
said?
this was in the 2000s.
Early 2000s?
Early 2000.
Okay.
Yes. And there was nothing done about it. The police said that his officer was right. And they pretend like he had a gun, and they said the man didn't have a gun.
Do you recall any events that took place after that? Was there any type of protest or marching or boycotting or?
Well, Reverend Bandit worked with a lot of that. They tried to get a march done, but I think he went and talked to Mayor, was it Fuller? I think he was up there at that time. Yeah, Fuller was there. He was the mayor at that time. And I don't know the outcome of that. The man died. And then I think the girlfriend or somebody, whoever that was there in the house that opened the door, said she saw him when he came through the door and he fell. And I don't know, they tried to get the brother to, because he had just left the brother's house or something that night before, but there was not anything done. But he did form a ride. He did do, he said, we're going to have to get together and we all start meeting at St. James. They would do these call meetings. They had a bunch of people to come to St. James, and they met on this because they said that, I don't know what really happened after that. I don't know if they, sometime if they were paid off or what happened to that event. But it just went sour.
And these meetings were at St. James
Yes, and
Church.
that's where all of the meeting was held at.
The meetings for the specific event?
Yeah, pretty much for all of the marches and
Okay.
all of the things that was going on in the area, even if it was with the SCOC or the Voters League, it was either going to be at, most of the time, it was at St. James.
From your experience from 1988, when you officially joined the NAACP, to current day, how has it evolved? The Lee County branch of the NAACP.
Well, to be honest, I think now they're doing a very good job. Now they are, because at one time it got silent for a minute, and I wonder what was going on. But then I realized they didn't have anybody that were strong enough, well, I would say, to take the position. So it sort of kind of died down a little bit. And then I think a classmate of mine came in. There were some other people involved, but he came down. He said, well, why don't we just get this branch 5038 back up on the road, because it's kind of quiet right now. And I said, well, yeah, somebody need to do something. So right now they are doing a very good job, I think.
Right. Well, also, What year was this when you think that got the momentum back going again?
Well, actually, it just within the last year or so, be honest.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Was there a defining moment within the last year or 2 years that really kind of sparked it? Was it the George Floyd incident of 2020?
Yes,
Or
that really, I think that had a lot to do with it. And what's that, Breonna Taylor?
Breonna Taylor? Yes, ma'am.
Yes. And then when, what's his name? A Mexican. Darn, what's his name? Because he got out of jail and then he turned around and went back. This young black boy was walking up in Atlanta, I think, and they shot him and they killed him. And he was a Mexican that was in the.
I recall.
Yeah, do you?
Okay.
I'm trying to think of his name. I know it. Zimmerman.
Zimmerman. Okay.
George Zimmerman. I
Okay.
think that was a Mexican name.
Okay.
He killed this young guy, and the young guy was innocent. He was, I guess, by him being over in that neighborhood, but he had relatives that lived there, from what I understand, and he was going to their house, but I guess they thought he shouldn't have been over in that area, and they shot him.
Yes, ma'am. During these three events that you referenced here, being a member of the NAACP and maybe it being a little more silent at that time, was there talks amongst and maybe you and other people?
Yes, I own a beauty shop.
Okay.
And that was the headline every other day. There were somebody coming up, so-and-so. Now we watch the news very often, and that would come up in the shop. And if not, somebody was calling. If it wasn't walking through the doors, it was on that telephone. And I'm just going to be honest. And, it was, how would you say? It kind of heated up things, you know what I mean? And to see all of this taking place, and then there were nothing seemed like nothing done about it. So it was just kind of heating things up. And I told him, now somebody got to say something. Not something, but something. Yeah. Because there's too much going on and nobody not doing or saying anything about it. Sweeping it under the rug. It's time out for that.
Growing up during the civil rights movement and seeing the integration of schools and the integration of society, if you will, do you draw any correlation? Was there any familiar emotions between 2020 and the events that unfolded and the events of the civil rights movement?
Yes, a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, because now I don't work at the schools, but like I said, I run a beauty shop. And the feedback that I get, there were fights and things that had broke out at the school when they saw this, but they kind of didn't want that to be known in some of these areas.
Right.
And I think it really caused a lot of heartaches and pain, with them having to see this, and then it seemed like nobody wants to do anything about it. And so they act out. Some of them acted out.
The NAACP Lee County Branch 5038, during the 2020 movement for social justice and the things that we've seen during this time period, was there a one specific person that kind of like stood out and took a leadership position, or was it a group of people?
Well, there was a group of us. Now, Penn, always. Now, he and I worked together a lot.
Okay.
On a lot of these issues. We worked together for many years. And Gerald Greer, Lester Hostick, um, I can name a lot of the guys, and I pretty much know them all that dealt with, we all worked together with these issues when they was having problem with these issues, as far as the, when there was problem, you know what I mean? Yeah, there was a lot. We worked together a lot.
What is your current role with the NAACP?
Well, right now, I'm just a member, but like I said, I dealt with a lot of the older people that I went back to get a lot of this information from, as far as who may have been the president, who may have been the secretary, what role did you play, and how was things done back then. And, I learned a lot from them.
And you're on is it the historic committee?
Yes, I
Okay.
am.
And trying to
Get information.
and tell
Yes.
its history and its story. Why is it so important to you in your own, to tell
Well-
the story?
Well, it is important to me because I feel like the children now, the youth as of today or tomorrow, you may call it, they don't know enough. And they need to know what's going on. And a lot of them have not been taught because their parents have not taught them. So somebody got to teach them.
Yes, that's great. Thank you so much for that.
And they don't know. I mean, it's something that I tell my son all the time. I'll pick up the phone in a minute. Tell him, hey, look, so and so. Did you see this on TV? Did you hear about this or that may have happened? Wow.
You mentioned that you've owned a beauty shop for 45 years, you said?
Well, it's going on 44 years.
It's going on 44 years.
I graduated from cosmetology school in 1981.
And we know that barbershops
Yes.
and beauty shops
I knew you would get to it.
They are the hub
Yeah.
of a lot of communities.
Yes.
And
I knew you would get to it after a while.
would you say that yours is that hub?
Yes, that's correct.
So you have a really, really close, would it be fair to say that you have a really close
Knit.
pulse of
Yes.
the community?
Mhm. And therefore, I know a lot of people, and I sit down and I express things that's going on that they may not even know or may not even be familiar with, but I let them know what's going on. And then they let me know as well some of the things that I do not know.
Right. Throughout your time, from 1981 to 2023, coming up on these 44 years, anything specific really jump out to you about maybe the Auburn-Opelika area, maybe integration, maybe discrimination or anything, because I think you have such a unique perspective of having this beauty shop for, over 4 decades. Anything you'd like to share,
Well, I hate to get to this point, but I felt like I was discriminated against back when they were doing this PPP money. It was actually for COVID,
Yes, ma'am.
and there were people that applied for it, and they got it, never owned business, but it was specifically for business owners. And I filled out my papers, and I took them to my bank, which was Bank Corp South. And the young lady told me, said, well, I don't know how to fill them out. And I said, okay, you don't know how to fill them out? You need to get somebody else to do it. So I said, okay, that's not a problem. So they said, well, yeah, we letting people fill out the papers, the forms, to make sure everybody's treated fair. I said, okay. So I have a sister that worked at another bank in Auburn. And she said, well, you need to get your papers in. I said, okay. Okay. So I call myself filling them out myself because I didn't know actually how to do them. And I turned the paper in. When I sent them there, the lady just went off. These papers are wrong. I said, "What? I thought you said you didn't know how to fill them out." So, and just not long ago, so I had to call to Birmingham. And I let them know that I felt like I was being discriminated against. Because one of the girls, the lady, called me from the bank. And she said, "I stepped outside to call you to let you know that John said somebody turned their money back in that they didn't need it, to give it to somebody else that really needs it." So I said, "Well, okay, I'll get my papers and I'll turn them in tomorrow." I said, "But I made it clear, my CPA lives in Atlanta, and it is 2020. I said, "But then they was using the 2019 forms from the year before to tell what each person would get." So I take my papers back up there and fill them. My nephew filled them out, and he was a human resource manager in, at that time, it was North Carolina. And he said, "Well, Auntie, I'm going to send your papers back." And I knew they were right. So she said, "Well, you got to have your papers for 2020. I said, I made it clear that my CPA lives in Atlanta. It is 2020 now. We got until May to have these papers turned in. But they told me I had to have them turned in now. And I turned them back in, and you know what? They did not give me nothing, and I still have not received anything. So I went and I called Birmingham to the main office, and I told them I felt like I was discriminated against. I said, "Because I know what you did with the money. You gave that money to your friends, and I've been dealing with this bank since 1981 when I opened up my business. But I felt like I was done wrong." And she said, "Well, we're going to fill out these discrimination papers because that was not right." Well, one of the girls, they fired her, but there was another one still there working. And right now, I still don't want to go back in the bank. Now they've shut one of them down, and I have to go to this bank now. But you know what? I don't go on the ends every now and then. Most time I go through the drive-thru. And I don't want to go to Auburn because that's where my sister worked. And I didn't want to jeopardize her job. I told them, for number one, you called me back and said my form was wrong. You lied because you said you didn't know how to fill them out. I said, and then you going to tell me, my sister, my business. That was not your duty to tell my sister about my paper, because my sister didn't know anything about me filling out the form. Really. But I didn't get it.
And what you're referring to was the Payment Protection Plan, I think
Yes.
it is, the PPP for 2020 COVID-19 pandemic.
Yes.
And you felt like you were discriminated against based on your your color, being an
Yeah.
African American business owner in
Right.
Opelika, Alabama.
Right.
Were there any other stories or anyone else? Was this a common theme, amongst any other business owners, local business owners in Opelika or Auburn area? Do you know of any, or do you think this was a common theme?
I don't know. There were several people, everybody that I pretty much talked with said, "Well, I did get something. I did." I mean, like I told them, it wouldn't have mattered if you didn't give me but $5. It's just a thought. Here I am, a business owner, and I've been dealing with you and then I went over to the other branch and I talked with one of the guys, and he was Caucasian. He said, "Virginia, I wish you would have come to me because I was filling them out for people that didn't know how to fill them out." He said, "That's why this particular young lady now is gone, because she lied. She kept stuff going and she lied."
During this time period, did the NAACP offer any, or not offer, but did they have any role with local business owners, or did they take any action or any?
I don't know about if they done anything because I did not go to them and explain what was going on. At that time with me, I told them, I said, well, I'm just going to take it just like this. God, He allowed me to be where I am today. And I'm not going to worry about it whether I get it or not. I'm going to live regardless of whether you all help me. And this is what I told the manager, which is the owner of the bank. I said, I'm going to make it regardless of whether you help me or not. I'm going to live because my parents taught me to go and get your own.
Also, I keep going back to it, but your beauty shop really, you know,
Yes,
I think
it, that beauty shop really brings in a lot, has done a lot for me.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
it has.
And I think too, you probably really have a pulse. You know, you really have I guess you're really close to what's going on in the community.
Yes,
during these
very
time
close.
periods.
I know a lot of things that's going on in that beauty shop.
Right.
It really is the landmark for me.
Right, and I think it's probably a landmark for a large portion of this community.
Yes, it is, because everybody knows me. Either it's from me singing at funerals or I'm singing at different programs and stuff like that because I'm a lead singer. I am the lead singer for my group. And we've been singing for over 20 plus years.
What group is this?
The Bryant Sisters.
The Bryant Sisters.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is what type of group?
Gospel music.
Gospel music.
But-
go ahead.
But when I was younger now, a lot of people knew me too back then because I used to sing the blues. I sung in a band.
Okay.
So I was traveling back and forth.
Was this a local band here?
Well, with a local band, and one was out of Columbus, Georgia. And we used to travel as far as, we would go wherever. Tennessee. It didn't make no difference, wherever. And so that's how I'm very well known because of either the blues or the gospel
Yes, ma'am.
in that beauty shop.
Yes, ma'am. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. So you were traveling around with the blues band
Over at Auburn University, how many times did we go there?
Oh, yeah.
Back in the day, yes. We used to stay on the campus over there
Okay.
at Auburn.
And these were the early 80s?
Yeah, it was in the early 80s.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was still in school.
You were
When I
still
was
at, you were
singing.
still at Opelika Technical College during this time?
No, I was in high school.
High school?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
You talking about maybe ninth grade.
Oh, okay.
But my brother was singing with me as well, so my mother would say, okay, you got to take care of her. And then she told the owner of the band, who is Bird Eye, Arthur Jordan, he's dead now, used to own a barber shop as well downtown. I'm going to let my 2 children go with you, but you better bring them back just like you left with them.
When you were traveling to Auburn during your high school time period with this blues band and singing, did you feel discriminated against, or what was the atmosphere between Opelika and Auburn? You know.
Well, now, Opelika itself used to not get along.
Okay.
They used to argue because of the football team, the basketball team, or the girls. Somebody from Opelika was going with the girl in Auburn, and they would bicker back and forth with each other. But I think they've gotten a little bit better now than
Okay.
what they used to. But back then, we used to go, it was Shepherd Purse, known as Shepherd Purse back then.
Shepherds.
Shepherd Purse.
Okay.
And there was one that the white student had, which was in Lochapoka down the road. They call it the Bull Shed.
Okay.
Okay, and this was where all of the white would go. But then the black started going up in there as well back then. But we used to go and sing there back in the day. And that's how, but they didn't treat me no way, because everybody was getting their head bad. Most of them was about tight, so they were just having fun.
They were having fun.
They sure was.
So you saw during this time period a integration on the social
Yes.
level between
The back.
African Americans and whites in
Right,
the
they
community. They were kind of getting along during that period of
Yeah,
time
they sure
at some
were.
of these establishments that you were performing at.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. That is it. Was the same like in Opelika at that time? Was
Yeah,
it?
it was.
Okay.
Mhm. It was.
Did you ever take part in any type of, I know you mentioned the grocery store boycott in the 1980s, but as a high schooler, were there ever any sit-ins at businesses or boycotts or anything that you remember taking part of, or maybe if you didn't take part of because you were young or
Yeah,
or
I was
whatever?
young.
Do you remember them going on during that time period?
Well, back then, yes.
Okay. Do you recall?
I'm trying to think, what was that guy's name? I can't think of it now. Oh, the radio station. Yeah. I think it was WJHO.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, what about the radio station?
They would have, but John Rice, he's a realtor. But he got to be pretty fair with that radio station, but at one time they were not letting any blacks come in. And then all of a sudden, I think John Rice had it first. It belonged to his mother. John Rice, he owned Rice Realty now. And now he let things kind of smoothed over a little bit, and he knew that the blacks didn't have anywhere to go as far as, getting the news, the obituaries and stuff like that. So he allowed the black guy, which is Mr. A.J. Harris, he's dead now, to come in, and they would do radio announcements and stuff like that. As a matter of fact, one of my uncles, he used to do it too, Reverend Willie Baker. They would use that WJHO radio station.
Now, was this a once a week?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe, was it on a Sunday?
Weekend, yeah, on a Sunday.
Weekend?
Majority of the time it was on Sunday.
So during that time period, in the late 1960s, early 1970s, is this when you're referencing? Was this during that time period or a little bit later on?
Yeah, it was during that time. Might have been a little bit later than that.
Okay.
Mhm.
You're saying that you didn't really see a lot of African American obituaries in the newspaper.
No, you did not. You didn't see nothing.
Okay, yeah. So you're still seeing some segregation at this point in time. Do you remember the NAACP at all having any initiatives or any type of movement or anything?
Nobody was doing anything.
Okay. So it was really Mr. John Rice who kind of got
Yeah.
that started with the local radio station here.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I know that's with news announcements and things. Well, what about certain types of music on the radio station and things of that nature? Was that
Yeah,
still?
well, back then, pretty much everybody looked at the television.
Okay. For that type of stuff. And you said your current role now, you're just a member, but you're a very active member.
Very active member.
And you're on the historic committee.
Yes.
And working with telling the history of the NAACP Lee County branch, 5038.
5038.
I was getting those numbers mixed up there. Yes, ma'am. What is your hopes for the NAACP in the future?
Well, I hope that they get even better, because there's always room for improvement. And I hope that, the reason why I said it like that is because of the fact that I wish that they would have done some of this way back then when everything was quiet. because there was so much, because a lot of the people now that was heavily involved in that NAACP, there were family members that were still alive that could have given us a lot of information that we are trying to get today. I wish they would have done that just a little bit earlier than what they are doing now. It's a good thing that they are doing what they are doing. It's great. But I wish they had been done a few years back, because I feel like they could have gotten a whole lot more information, because some of these people are going home now to be with the Lord. You know that. That's why I tell people now, if you want any kind of information from the older person, get it now. Get your tape recorder and record it so that you would have this information now, because it's not guaranteed that they will be here.
Yes, ma'am.
You know what I mean?
Yes, ma'am.
And I hope that, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
Excuse me. But I hope that they can get a lot more information, whatever information they can get. I hope they get it together and let you all or whoever compact this information so that our younger generation can one day open it up and look and see, wow, all this stuff happened. Because they will not know. And there are some places they trying to keep the history out of the classroom. And if the parents don't teach them, or if it's not in a book where they can read it, they won't know. Because there's a lot of things that goes on now. A lot of generation, the younger generation, don't know anything about it.
With that being said, it reminded me of something really quickly. Your education, if you remember back in high school, at Darden High School, do you remember there being a difference between, what you were taught then and what you know now? Like, you referenced
Yes.
keeping stuff out of the curriculum.
Right, yes, there was a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that they taught us when I was in school. They didn't hold anything back. No. But now, I feel sad for the students. I really do. Like I said, if the parents don't teach them, or the grandmothers, because a lot of time the parents, they don't have no business, or they don't have the time. And it requires that you sit down and talk to educate your children on this type information, because a lot of time they're not going to read. So if you don't teach them, they won't know.
Do you remember having that influential person when you were a child that taught you? I know
Yes.
You said you hung around the elders.
Yes,
a lot.
I hung around the elderly, so I was always listening.
What was it, a grandparent?
A grandparents, any old person, I would sit there. My grandmama wouldn't run me off the porch. Everybody else had to go. But she would always let me sit there, and they would get mad with me and say, "Oh, you the old grandmama pet." I said, "No, I'm not the pet." But,
You just listen.
I just listen. If you don't, that's the only way you're going to learn. You got to listen. Sometimes you got to close that and listen.
I'm trying to make sure I cover all the bases here. And is there anything that I haven't asked you or we haven't talked about that you can recall? I know when we get in the car and we drive away, we'll think of 10 things that we
Right,
should ask.
that's right. Well, there were one time we were doing a march or boycott, because we used to do a lot of boycotts. And Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., his son came down, and Dr. Joseph Lyers out of Atlanta, Georgia, he came down, and with the SCLC Abernathy, and there was a lot of problems racial thing that was going on here in the city of Opelika, and they came down, and, honey, it was nothing for us to pull them signs out, boycotts.
Okay. What year was that? You said that was Martin Luther King Jr.'s son.
Yes.
Okay.
I would say it was in the 80s.
In the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember specifically what was going on? I know you said some racial tensions, but
I'm trying to think what was going on during that time. Public Works. Oh, the trash can.
okay.
The garbage, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They was not paying those guys. They were not getting paid the money. The same thing. They were not getting paid like any of the rest of them was.
So yeah, so we're seeing during this time in the early 1980s that there was a pay discrimination.
Yes,
going
the
on
pay
between
was
the
a
different
lot.
races.
Yes,
And the NCAA took an active role into that. And,
right. Mm-hmm.
And you also said that maybe the SCLC came down, and there was collaboration between the two.
Right. That's right.
Okay, in the 1980s. Did you have any part in that? Did you take an active part?
One of those signs that was carrying them, boycotting.
You were boycotting. You were on the carrying the sign and
Yes.
picketing. Okay.
And Penn, he was involved in all
And
that.
Penn as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you say Penn, who are you?
Oscar Penn.
Oscar Penn.
Mm-hmm.
Is he still a member of the NAACP?
Yeah, he's the one that do all the talking that sits back, the heavy set, dark
Okay.
skin.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, I remember.
That can't hardly have a
Yes,
problem
ma'am.
walking.
Okay. Yep. I know Mr. Penn now. I
Yeah.
had to put a face to the name, but he's at all the meetings that we've
Yes,
been to so
he
far.
really, really
He's a
does.
very active member. Okay.
Very active.
So he was participating in these,
Oh, yeah. Very much so.
and I can't help but notice, and during this time period, you were just starting your own beauty shop business. SCLC, the NAACP were both all coming down to Opelika
Yeah,
to
they
really
came
talk
down
about
from
workers'
Atlanta.
wages. And
Yeah,
things.
them wages, they really had a problem with that. That's what it was. They was paying different pay.
And was your beauty shop, or maybe the barber shops at the time, did they serve as a hub in any way, shape, or form for
Now,
congregation of people? or-
Arthur Jordan Barbershop was. That was Bird Eye Barbershop.
Arthur Jordan. He goes by Bird Eye?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it was kind of a hub, you said?
Yeah, it was kind of a hub, and he was letting people know what was going on.
Okay. Did they have any meetings there, or still the
Yeah, they
meetings?
would sometimes go up there. Some of the guys, they would go and sit and have meetings there because Reverend Bandy and Arthur Jordan, they was all good friends. And he would go up there and discuss about what was going on in the area. They sit down and talk. So we had them barbershops and beauty shops. I guess you say, oh my God, here we go.
Oh, yeah, no, I recognize that they're.
But that's how a lot of the message was translated.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I was trying to, wrap my head around, is that did they serve as a medium for
Yes.
for messages to
Yes.
go across the community?
Absolutely.
Okay. And before you opened your beauty shop, was this also a reoccurring thing from some of the other beauty shops that were
Yes.
happening? And do you remember anything like in the 1960s or 1970s? Was that an informal communication channel of messages, or?
Normally, that's pretty much where everybody got their message from. But back those old ladies like Miss Spark and Miss Clark and the other older lady, they didn't do that much talking
Okay.
like the younger barbers and like the ones now do. Now, yes, it was an older man, Mr. Clinton. Now, he was an old barber as well, Mr. Clinton, and that's where a lot of the information would come out of his barber shop.
Okay. And he had a barbershop here in Opelika?
Yeah, in Opelika. As a matter of fact, I think his was built onto his house.
Okay.
Clinton Griffin, I believe that's his last name, Griffin. Because my first cousin used to work with him, so we had a way of getting the information.
Okay. Miss Virginia, do you have anything else before we wrap up?
I guess you said I'm about to talk you to death now.
No, not at all.
I'm just glad to see the NAACP stepping it up to where as far as they've gotten right now, and I hope things continue to go well for them, and because there's always room, like I said, for improvement, and I hope that more people get involved, because now I do have a lot of people that after hear me talk and hear stuff like that, they said, Virginia, I want to be a part of the NAACP. And then there's a lot of them that elderly, old people wants to join back. So that's a good thing. He said, I might not be able to go because I talked with Mr. Lou Walter Gunn. He's 91.
Okay.
And he said that I was a member of the NAACP. I was once a member, and I've gotten older now. I can't drive, but I would love to become a member. And I said, well, you haven't said anything but a word, because I'll come by and collect from you. Yeah. I think that was overwhelming to me to see 91 years of age, and you got younger people, you gotta try to get them involved, but a 91-year-old, wow, come on.
And Mr. Gunn, he's from this Auburn, Opelika area?
Yes,
he's lived here for a while?
He's been here for a while. He's an old retired school teacher, as a matter of fact. Yeah.
Yeah. I imagine he has a lot of stories to tell.
Yes, he does.
We probably would love to capture some of his stories. Miss Virginia, this is my pleasure to speak with you today. I know we may meet again as some things come along, and you know, you can always reach out to us. Before we wrap things up, any other comments you think that you know of? I just want to.
Well, I don't have anything else to say. I'm just glad that I have gone through what I've gone through, because it has taught me a lot. It has made me stronger. Even seeing the things that I've seen, you know what I mean? It helped me to be an even better person.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you so much once again, Mike Smith, Auburn University History Department, Miss Virginia Peters Graham.
Yes.
Okay, make sure I pronounce that right. October 2nd, Monday, 2023, and we do have permission once again to use this recording.
Sure, it's not a problem, none whatsoever.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Graham, for your time, and we'll stop the recording now.
Okay.